Hey guys, this is Tom here. I'm just gonna quickly show you how I stitch three shots into one big panoramic shot. My cousin took me around Saigon yesterday, and it was unfortunately a little after sunset, so it's pretty dark. But we went along this tiny bridge, and I saw a bunch of these houses along the river. So I fired off a few shots, all handheld. So I've checked these out, and I'm gonna select these three shots here: 74, 75, and 76. I've checked it for sharpness. They're all good handheld, so those are the ones I'm going to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Photoshop, and I'm on the Photoshop CC. Go to File. I guess go down to Automate. It's been a while since I've done this. And I'm going to go to Photo Merge, and I'm going to hit Browse right here. And let's go to that card. See if we can find those files. I believe they were 74, 75, and 76. Yep. So I'm going to open those up, and depending on how fast your computer is, it might take a moment. Oh wait, maybe I should click OK. And it's going to open up each picture as a separate layer, and it's going to kind of blend it together using its algorithms, and it's really good. It's usually spot on, and there might be some minor things that you might have to correct in post process, but or retouching, but it's usually pretty good. It's still thinking here. And it says blend selected layers based on content. So let's give it a few more seconds and see what it does. Now these are raw files, these are not JPEGs. Excuse me, I'm assuming with JPEGs it would take a little less time, although I will be playing with the raw files and processing them, so that's why I selected raw. I'm going to have more leeway. I did not attempt to do HDR, that's why I shot raw, so I can kind of stretch the details a little bit as far as the exposures and shadows and highlights. Okay, so here it is. So the angles that I shot, the three exposures, were not, of course, perfect along the same plane. So that's why you see a little bit of this different field of view type angles here when it merged all three photos. But so that's it for merging. It looks pretty good, actually. I was kind of concerned about the moving water. It wasn't really moving, it was fairly still, but you can see ripples there. But it doesn't look like there's any obvious stitching error at all as I pan through here very quickly. We got some flying birds in the background that were moving, so that's why we have those. But I'm going to leave those there. That's just part of the photo, so I don't mind those. And all right, so how are we going to mess around with this? These are raw files, and I'm trying to remember how to do this. It's been a while, but I think I should probably, I don't think I can, excuse me, I'm still recovering from a sickness. I'm going to flatten this image, so then it's almost like one big giant file, okay? I'm going to duplicate it, because I always duplicate the layer before I start to do any retouching on it. It makes it easy to compare the before and after. I'm going to right click on layer 1, the duplicate layer. I'm going to convert this to a smart object. And this way, what it does is it allows me to go up to filter here and go down to camera raw filter. So it's almost like one big giant raw photo. And here I can do all my raw adjustments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with this a bit, and let's see here. The white balance, you can adjust your white balance. As I've said before, this is all just playing around with sliders and just kind of seeing how it looks to your eye. You know, you're the artist, you're the creator. So I'm going to, what I like to do with like dark shots or nighttime shots or near sunset shots is I like to add a little bit of magenta to it because it gives it a little bit of a warmer um, atmosphere, a more gentle, soothing atmosphere, to me anyway. I always like just a touch of magenta in my darker shots. And then, um, let's see, I'll bump up the shadows. Let's see how much I can, see I can raise the shadows quite a bit actually. I'm all the way at 100 here. And you could see almost all this detail. Now, if you zoom in a little bit, you're going to see some noise. But really, this sensor is so good, I mean, that you're even able to see this type of detail after lifting the shadows. I'm already at ISO 2500, so that's already relatively high, but I really love this sensor. Play with the contrast a little bit just to give it a little more pop. Maybe 18 looks good there. The highlights, I don't really think anything's very blown out in the upper left, but let's see what happens if I bring it down. See, that brings out the clouds a little bit more. So maybe if I bring down the highlights to, I don't know, 19 or so, and I'm only judging this mostly by eye. The blacks, make those blacks a little bit deeper, add a little bit of pop. Maybe not too deep, otherwise I start to darken the entire picture. 20 looks good. Whites, the overall brightness of it, maybe, I don't know, around 40. If you hold down the alternate key, you can actually see what parts start to get blown out. Same with the blacks. If you hold down the alt key and then you move around the blacks, you can see how much of the blacks are getting crushed. So you don't, the general rule is you don't want to crush your blacks too much or blow out your highlights too much. Now, one of my favorite sliders is the clarity slider, and that really brings out a little bit of pop and the illusion of sharpness. I don't want to overdo the clarity slider though, so maybe I'll just do like 17. That looks good. Vibrancy at 15 looks good. Saturation, I usually don't do too much with saturation. My vibrancy is usually higher than my saturation. The reason being is that if you raise the saturation too much, you're going to blow out those color channels and you're going to lose detail. But if you increase your vibrance, you're keeping the detail. You're not losing detail. With saturation, it's easier to do that. So I usually don't bump up my saturation too much. If I like certain colors, I'll go to this pane up here where I can adjust the individual saturation myself of individual colors. Now, like I said, if we zoom in at 100%, we're going to see some noise, but you have to understand, that's 200%, that this is a very, very big photo file. The Sony a7R delivers 42 megapixel files, so when you normalize it for screen viewing, you're really not going to see it. At least it's not going to bother me. So the sharpening is at 0, and it's already pretty sharp. I mean, you can see all the details of the rails in the distant background here when you zoom all the way in. And one of the culprits of noise is actually too much sharpening will sharpen your noise as well. So I'm not even going to touch sharpening right there. I'm going to go into luminance, noise, and it's kind of like a delicate balance here. You increase the noise reduction too much, you will start to lose detail. So here it's pretty visible that you can smooth out some of that noise without losing the detail. Like I said, you're going to reduce this anyway, so it's not going to be very perceptible. Color noise, I don't really see too much, but I'm going to, it's almost no penalty to play around like wildly with the color slider. It's the regular luminance noise that can really mess up your detail. Color not so much, so I don't mind jacking that up a little bit. And let's zoom out a bit. It looks pretty good. If I hit the P key, the letter P, you could see your before and after here, just like that. And it's quite a difference on the shadow detail that we were able to recover. Like I said, almost like HDR, except you're playing with one raw file. Now, could I get a better quality file if I shot low ISO and did multiple exposures? Yes, of course, but we didn't have that type of time. I didn't have a tripod on me, and we were on a very busy, tiny bridge with motorbikes zooming by. The final touch I'm going to add is maybe here in the split toning for the highlights area. I'm going to leave the shadows alone, but I'm going to slide it to the more orange and add just a little bit of warmth overall to the entire highlighted area. And that really adds a nice little warm atmosphere towards the whole thing. And that's basically it for my raw adjustments. I can hit OK, and this opens it right up in Photoshop again. And remember, this is on a layer above the original layer. So if I click on this eyeball here, you can see the difference, the before and after, on how much more pleasing that photo looks. And with that said, I can crop in to whatever ratio I want, but since I want a panoramic, I kind of want to have that horizontal look to it. So I hit OK, and I think that's my cousin calling me, but I'm going to ignore that. So forgive the sound if you hear it. So it's cropped, and what I can do is flatten all of this and save it as a file, and there you go. You have your tutorial on how to stitch 3 photos. Thanks for tuning in.